I think we'll go with Emilio's team first. We've seen some of these before, so I'm not going to get excited for them. It's Talonflame, Tatsugiri, Dondozo, Sylveon, Meowscarada. And then a Glamora, which a Pokemon I wasn't really expecting to see here at this tournament. Of course, it does have that very unique ability in Toxic Debris. And we've never really messed around with, entry hazards as such in the video game championship. So maybe it'll become a crazy factor that now we all have to think about a lot more. But we're getting a little bit of variety over on to Collin's side of the field as well. Baxcalibur, a Pokemon I'm pretty excited to kind of see in action and see if it lives up to some of the hype that some people have been putting behind it. Volcarona, Sylveon, Taurus, it is going to be the Aqua breed on that one. I think this one's a tough one. You do have to kind of squint a little bit at it just to make sure you get the right version of it. Followed up with the King Gambit and the Garganacl.
Yeah, I love this. I think kind of the key takeaway from it is that its move variety is nuts. And then, yeah, we aren't used to entry hazards. This is something you may have noticed if perhaps you're used to single battles watching the stream. It isn't usually good in doubles because it's not worth the turns it takes to use the move. But Glamora getting to use it for free, as part of its ability is really powerful.
It definitely adds a little bit of variety to the game, and it's going to be something we're going to have to talk about and think about right off the bat, as it's Glamora, Meowscarada for Emilio, and then Collin with the King Gambit and Baxcalibur. So kind of all the toys, all new Pokemon in the leads for this one. I'm bored. I've seen the Garchomp. I've seen it for years, Scott. I'm excited. We've got a lot to unpack here and see how all these Pokemon interact.
Yeah, for the Pokemon I was most excited to see at this tournament, so I could not be happier about this turn. I think, keep in mind, all of them are going to dish out a ton of damage.
Yes.
Like, 4 of the most offensively gifted Pokemon of this generation. Something to keep in mind, too. I mean, Collin's got some interesting type advantage here. He's got a Steel-type threatening, Glamora, and then that.
Yeah, there's the Eye Shard from the Baxcalibur into the Meowscarada. Just knocking it out, so not even given an opportunity to play. Baxcalibur losing some of its health in exchange. But Glamora fires back with the Earth Power. Not going to be enough to knock out the King Gambit, but it is going to do a whole lot of damage and lower its special defense, which in turn has activated Defiance. So this King Gambit has Iron Head and just fires back for a knockout. Yes, the Toxic Debris activates. Yes, there are going to be some Toxic Spikes on the ground, but that is an 0 for 2 swap on the side. Collin Heier. I think that's what we would call a good opener.
Yeah, you don't hate it. Be interesting. We will see both Dondozo and Tatsugiri coming out here. So, yeah, I mean, it's a tough spot. We will get to see. Collin will get to kind of counter this however he wants to. Now he has all 4 of his Pokemon remaining. Didn't take a whole lot of damage there, and the damage he did take may have worked in his favor, right? Where there's not too much that Emilio could have done about it, right? I mean, he's got to use the super effective move. But wow, that's a rough first turn.
That is not the position that Emilio wanted to be in. Of course, Dondozo does have the ability to win games, just because the Commander ability makes it an absolute unit. But I think it may be facing a little bit too much work. It is going to start getting some assistance, though, with the order up. It's going to go into the Baxcalibur. It's not going to be enough for the knockout, and it's going to get that attack boost. Baxcalibur, though, saying, yes, I'm going to just fire back with the Glaive Rush. It is going to lose some of its health, and it's not, of course, going to get knocked out by that. As Kotal Cleave hits the Dondozo. It's sitting at half health. Yes, it got the order up in. Yes, it's going to do more damage, but it's still got a long way to go in this game.
And we see 2 of our recently discovered Pokemon really showing off their defensive prowess there. Pretty impressive that Baxcalibur was able to survive that and actually dished out pretty good damage back to Dondozo. And then even the boosted Kotal Cleave doing a little bit less than I expected. It's still scary for Emilio where if that Kotal Cleave were to crit, that would be a game-ending move.
Yeah, that would be a huge problem. The King Gambit showing off a little bit more of its moveset here with the Sucker Punch, trying to catch it short. As Baxcalibur going again for the Glaive Rush into the Protect. No issue there. I think Glaive Rush is a very, very interesting move, and I'm glad we get to see it, even if it's not getting all of the effects we want.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these stronger Dragon-type attacks in the game. It's one of the weaknesses. These poor Dragon-type Pokemon, they just don't have like a super appropriate physical attack for double battles, but the unique one here does.
Yeah, being able to find that out has helped. Dondozo does get to fire off the Earthquake. That's going to be doing pretty decent damage to the Baxcalibur. By that I mean enough to knock it out and start the sweep. I think this Dondozo set is probably one that if it needs to sweep is going to be relying on Earthquake, and I like the way that that's the first time we've seen it. Of course, Collin does know about it, but it is now, even though it doesn't look like it, a 2 for 2 on this one, so that early turn kind of taken away a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he does get a free switch for both these Pokemon now, and Toro's going to come out here and negate some of the benefits that Dondozo has had for having free reign so far. But it is interesting to see that Earthquake. It's a move that I think every Dondozo wishes it could fit on its moveset, but it's tough to get on there. It does make it much easier to actually knock out multiple Pokemon at once, threatening damage across the board.
Yeah, definitely one of those moves that helps you with the sweeping when you're trying to clean up a game very quickly. Of course, the Taurus getting poisoned by those earlier toxic spikes, the Garganacl not going to be affected by those. One of those very cool new Pokemon, something I've not seen that much of, and I am, of course, excited to be able to see it in action. But it's certainly going to have a bit of a time when it comes to dealing with this Dondozo. It is going to be dealing with it next turn, though, as it goes for the Protect.
Yeah, it makes sense. Emilio's kind of just got to, rest his hopes on this Dondozo, so just making sure every time he can, getting that leftovers healing. There isn't a whole lot of way that Collin can punish here. These Pokemon don't have any stat increasing attacks. Why not take the free stats?
Yeah,
the free health, rather.
Seems a little bit silly to just leave that on the table and not capitalize on it as the leftovers ticks one more time. And speaking of ticks, it's going to be the Taurus getting hurt by that poison from the toxic spikes. So that Glamora, yes, it got knocked out turn 1, but it's back. It's going to haunt this Taurus for the rest of the game. Of course, just the one layer of toxic spikes, so a consistent amount between turns.
Yeah, it's pretty neat synergy, right? I mean, we've seen these Dondozo, even in losing situations, kind of just hang out in the field forever, and, that poison adds up.
Yeah, if you can get 2 layers down as well and get the toxic poison, it adds up even quicker. There is going to be a bit of action going on in this turn. It's finally time for the terrestrialization. Certainly going to be very impactful here as we get through the end of it. We did get to take a look, and of course, this isn't a secret. It's another one of those flying-type Dondozos.
It's a big deal there. I mean, the Dondozo need to pick up that knockout relatively efficiently on this Taurus. But it's not going to get it. That's a good Protect.
Yeah, the Protect there, keeping things going. Obviously, it is going to take the poison damage, but that's going to be it. Terra Blast, yeah, into the Taurus. Not going to be able to go flying into fighting and get one of those cool knockouts. As Garganacl goes with the Salt Cure. Super effective, getting a little bit more damage down on the Dondozo.
Crucially, being Salt Cured here. We're kind of mentioning the poison-type damage adding up in the other side of the field. The Salt is going to add up much quicker. Really nice situation here. One of the great things that one of the great tools to use against Dondozo. That Salt Cure does a bunch of damage here, and then it kind of just negates the option of protecting for leftovers, right? Now every turn, if he uses Protect, he's going to lose some health. So, cuts down the amount of turns that can last in the game. Garganacl is one of those Pokemon that is very frustrating to play against as a Dondozo player because it's really tough to deal with the game efficiently. Often knows Wide Guard, which this one does, which also kind of eliminates the safety of that Earthquake option. Really nice, and we do see it right here.
Yep, there's the Wide Guard. So this Garganacl doing a lot of work on this one, making sure that it's not going to be getting caught by an Earthquake, but it is Terra Blast heading into that Taurus. Of course, Taurus a little bit different to how some of you may remember it from over 20 years ago. It is now a fighting type, and that is going to be a real easy knockout there for the Dondozo. Feeling pretty good as the Garganacl did nothing useful that turn, not negating an Earthquake, kind of causing some problems. Of course, the big thing here is the Salt Cure, taking away a good chunk every single turn. I can hear the cries of people in the last generation dealing with those vine lashes between turns and the wildfires. Guess what? Garganacl does something really similar.
Yeah, the trouble, though, is that Garganacl doesn't do much else, right? Where, it doing nothing is, it's not really any slight to Collin, though, right? It kind of just salts things and then tries to survive. But, we see it doing a good job there. It shrugs that off pretty easily.
Yep, there's another Salt Cure, though. Trying to get that extra bit of damage down. Of course, it does do damage before that residual damage between turns. And, of course, into the Flying type, it's super effective. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to be enough. I mean, you're right. What else has it got in the locker that's going to be able to deal with this?
Yeah, it may not need much. The problem on the other side is, Dondozo's not really doing anything to it either. It does have both Protect and Recover. So, yeah, Dondozo's going to need a lot more to pick up a knockout here. One of the problems is, Dondozo can only learn 4 moves. The missing move is Wave Crash, which is very relevant to this matchup.
Yeah, that is a big one. But these order-ups are starting to hurt really, really badly. I think it's going to be one of those situations where Garganacl has to hold on, then get it down to the Tatsugiri, and then kind of do the same thing on loop. This is a certainly slower matchup, but I think we're getting used to that already. I think that's something that we are seeing. Obviously, there's the leftovers recovery, but it is going to be kind of worn away. Both trainers with leftovers here, so plenty to work through between the turns. This is definitely one of these slower paces as yet. Salt Cure, going to do a good little chunk, but not really enough to threaten an immediate turnaround.
Yeah, it's a strange situation here, too. Where, normally in this situation you want to, protect to deal with this. Well, he's going to get the Earthquake through, so.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely huge. Of course, those order-ups have been racking up. And yeah, a just big drop of health. I don't know if it can take another one of these.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation. The players are moving so quickly, it's tough to explain, but there's kind of a rock, paper, scissors here where wide guard blocks Earthquake, but...
doesn't block order up.
Yeah, it doesn't block order up. And neither does Protect, actually, where it stops the damage, but it still allows the attack boost, which potentially still causes Garganackle to either be knocked out or be taken low enough where Tatsugiri can finish off the game. It's a really careful dance for Collin, right, where he's got to call every turn he can correctly here to try to have enough health to be able to survive the assault from Tatsugiri, even if he does get Dondozo down. This is really tight. I think could be one more turn with Solik here. I'm not totally sure with leftovers. I think it's 2 more. But yeah,
I think so too.
Yeah, I think it may just be 1 turn too fewer. I don't know how Collin's going to wiggle his way out of this one.
Well, this is where the Dondozo going flying type is actually huge. Solkir, of course, being more effective onto the water and the steel types. Being a flying type, it's only half of what it would be against, it would be doubled, essentially, if it was a water or steel type. But it's time for Terastallization on Collin's side. Is going with the grass on the Garganackle, so, probably trying to help out a little bit when it comes to just getting Earthquaked a lot. Try and solve that one. Oh, but the Terra Blast coming in as the flying type. That's a lovely read, and Garganackle is dropped here. So after a disastrous turn 1, Emilio Forbes showing how the Dondozo can just win games on its own.
Absolutely, and kind of in the reverse of what we saw in the previous round. We saw the counter to Dondozo sort of get out in the field, but Garganackle's a lot shakier, right? I think it's stronger into some other matchups, so it brings a lot of value to the team, but even having it out there against Dondozo, you've got to be a little bit clever to get through it. It looks a little bit silly at the end there. If you're wondering why Collin hadn't opted to use that Terastallization sooner, that's the reason, right? Where there's a little bit of rock, paper, scissors going on there. If he had caught Earthquake instead, he probably wins that game. So he was just that close, but a wise move by Emilio not to open the door for that to happen. And it'll be very interesting to see how the players approach the second game.
I still have this combination that is one of the best combinations in the game, and I will be able to fight back from it. So really showing the quality of these players. Of course, Collin, you've got to give him credit for putting himself in that position, just understanding exactly where he can trade and exchange. I think that's really, really big. But not being able to close it out, maybe showing why Garganackle isn't top of the usage charts. There is going to be a mix-up as the leads hit the field. It is the King Gambit returning once again, but it'll be partnered off with the Volcarona. Bit of a throwback there, a Pokemon I've not seen in a while. And speaking of Pokemon I've not seen in a while, Talonflame making an appearance next to Sylveon.
Yeah, so both of these Pokemon aren't used quite the way that perhaps you've seen in the past. Volcarona typically used as a supportive Pokemon now. Some people still do the Quiver Dance thing, though this one is on the Overheat Rage Powder sort of spectrum. And then Talonflame also is typically now a more defensive Pokemon. Often gets that Tailwind up and then mostly focused on, Will-O-Wisp and kind of just controlling the game. However, Volcarona's defense is terrible. So the Brave Bird from that Talonflame, even though, perhaps it's not as offensively oriented as it used to, would still be plenty. So a lot of threat coming to Collin's side of the field, kind of in the same way it was last game.
Yeah, definitely an interesting matchup to see how this one plays out. It is going to be, in my opinion, pretty explosive when they just start throwing attacks. Once again, none of these Pokemon that slow the game down into making an appearance. Talonflame showing it is now a support Pokemon, landing the taunt into the Volcarona, so being able to get that one first. Taking away the Volcarona's Tailwind, King Gambit goes with the Iron Head, and of course, Sylveon sees that one come in, lands the Protect there very nicely. Sylveon, one of those Pokemon that now it knows, hey, I'm up against the Steel type, what do you do? Well, you can pick up a Fire type if you want, Sylveon. That's an interesting angle that is going to be able to be played out here. And like you say, what does this Volcarona do? Now all of its really cool, really useful supportive moves are gone. You need to kind of find something to do.
Yeah, I think it's a crucial element of the open team sheet, right? Where before you might be more scared. And this gives you, it's like, well, he really only has Overheat, right? I have a ton of Pokemon that resist fire. I'm going to send out Dondozo, and what's it going to do? Threatening Will-O-Wisp on the other spot. I think it's going to be very difficult for Collin to do anything in this situation.
Well, it's going to be a Will-O-Wisp into the King Gambit, so reducing that damage output really, really nicely. Maybe he'll be able to get away with the Defiant if it's burned as well. Volcarona does throw out the Overheat into the Dondozo. Good amount of damage, considering it's not very effective. But, the Volcarona now isn't going to be able to do that once again. They follow up Iron Head into the Dondozo. Yes, it took a lot of damage on the way in, but it is going to start healing it off right away with the leftovers, and it feels like a very safe switch indeed there for Emilio.
Yeah, it's weird. We've seen a lot of players playing very conservatively with Dondozo, like not really trying to allow it to take any damage before it gets the stat boost, but Dondozo can fight fine. It is plenty bulky even without having Commander active, and, the ability for it just to eat that overheat without any real risk there is really strong. He could have done it the other way too, I guess, where Tatsugiri not really going to care about that overheat either. And yeah, I think Collin's in a weird spot where he's going to burn Pokemon in a Volcarona who's just providing no threat now. He's got to get in a situation to start threatening some damage.
Well, the Volcarona is leaving the field after the overheat and the Taunt. I'm pretty sure I described it as not useful any longer in the matchup. As Taurus does get to land the Intimidate, so it it gets to lower some attacks here, maybe help itself out a little bit. But of course, what the Talonflame went for here could be very, very interesting. It does have access to the Brave Bird. That is something that Collin knows about. It's on the team sheet. I don't know if swapping in a fighting type in front of it is going to be the way to go, as yeah, it takes a lot of damage even after that Intimidate, just over half. It's going to be a follow-up counter cleave into the Talonflame, and yeah, that is nowhere near the requisite amount of damage to get a knockout. Talonflame looking real healthy on that one.
Yeah, I mean, this King Gambit also doesn't seem to be trained as aggressively as we've seen in the past to attack there. Like, it doesn't have its base stats in general just like very strong. So I think it seems like Collin's probably chosen to go a little more defensive here. That's the second kind of sad couch cleave we've seen this match.
Yeah, that one really didn't impress me, as it does leave the field. A double switch here for Collin Heier. It's a big play. He needs some repositioning, and I think I got a lot of time for him being able to say, I'm in a bad spot and I need something new. Talonflame, though, takes the opportunity to weave in a Tailwind, being able to get that set up and keep things moving along. Tatsugiri doesn't need the Dondozo, is just starting off with a Draco Meteor. Good damage down onto that Volcarona.
Yeah, I don't know if you had Tatsugiri on your board for the Pokemon who's put out the most damage so far this game, but finally get one pretty big swing. I don't know if there's that much value in it. Like, do you want to knock out Volcarona? There's some value in trying to fish for that switch, right? But Tatsugiri heading right back out here, and Emilio cycling pretty effectively.
Yeah, her switches have been going largely unpunished. I don't think he's really in a bad spot. And Collin's making a lot of switches too, so he needs to be playing around that one. Does get that King Gambit back in, but guess what? It's still burned, and that is still going to feel really, really bad. Talonflame does land the Taunt onto the Garganacle, so shutting down some of those really frustrating moves that it does have access to, like Recover and Wide Guard, as there is going to be a very easy knockout there with the Salt Cure. Of course, it doesn't even need the chip. It is a Talonflame. It's very weak to rock-type attacks.
Yeah, the Garganacle, not the most offensively skilled Pokemon you will ever see, but when it's Talonflame, who cares?
Hey, that now tops the leaderboard for damage done. If you go percentage damage done, it's Garganacle on top, followed by Tatsugiri, followed by, I think Talonflame next would probably be about right. So yeah, the big hitter's not really making an impression yet.
It is a big taunt, though. Garganacle, you don't really want to eat a bunch of Salt Cures either, but you can no longer Wide Guard. Sylveon really doesn't want to be matched up against that. You'd assume with the burned King Gambit, also not showing the greatest attack investment perhaps that we've ever seen, Sylveon is able to attack here if it wants to, even without terastallizing, though it's not super clear what Emilio would terastallize if not Sylveon, so maybe just do it anyway.
Yeah, being able to change your type and then just throw out a big attack is still really, really good. Sylveon certainly in an interesting position in the metagame right now with the ability to change its type, but still then throw out Pixelate Hyper Voice is certainly a cool use of it. One of those Pokemon that I think has really benefited from the mechanic. Tatsugiri, though, throwing out the Muddy Water, getting good damage down, actually, on that Garganacle. Accuracy's down as well, getting all of the treats in this one, as the Hyper Voice keeps bringing them low, but not enough for those lockouts. Will be getting a lot easier, though, as the Throat Spray activates and boosts that special attack. The Iron Head going into the terastallized Sylveon. Definitely not the damage it was looking even worse after it. But Salt Cure is going to do a lot more because of that change. So doubling up in that slot, meaning he gets a good result out of it either way.
Yeah, looking at it again, maybe an iffy terastallization. Emilio's still in a great spot, so I doubt it's going to matter too much. But yeah, also no longer has a resistance to that Sucker Punch that we'd probably expect to see on the other side. Maybe survives anyway with the damage we've seen from this King Gambit, but it's a huge taunt on the Garganacle, right? That's two different moves that normally would have been able just to erase with the Wide Guard. Instead, coming across here, and it's tough. Both these Pokemon kind of getting pinned down where they can't afford another turn of that. It's tough to switch, where then there'd be a lot of damage on the incoming Pokemon. Emilio's just done a really good job in both of these games, creating a situation where it's just not clear what path Collin has to actually move toward winning the game.
And also, he does still have access to Dondozo, a Pokemon that can close out the games and cause those problems. So we'll see. The next turn, I think, is going to swing the momentum in one person's favor, and we'll see how these switches go as Collin removes the Garganacle, wants to save that for the Dondozo match at the end, being able to use that Salt Cure for maximum efficiency. But a low health Volcarona coming in. That is going to be a critical hit Sucker Punch onto the Sylveon. So the resistance gone and a critical hit means it's going to get the knockout. There's going to be a lot of work having to be done by this Tatsugiri here, though. That is going to be a tough one. It is Muddy Water, though. Did do quite a lot of damage last turn. Gets the knockout on Volcarona. Full short on King Gambit, but it doesn't matter. The burn's going to get it at the end of the turn. Anyway, it did get the accuracy drop, but...
Yeah, yeah, definitely one of the trollier Defiant boosts that you're ever going to get, where it's like, darn.
It would have been cool if you could have maybe got another Sucker Punch off, but that burn from earlier becoming very important in the damage calculation here. So it is going to be a fun situation where it's Garganacle versus the Dondozo matchup. This is the matchup that he wants to bring it to, right, with the Salt Cure and being able to do that big damage. But it is a very low health Garganacle, and that is certainly going to struggle when it comes to saying, you know what, it's got a long way to go and not a lot of health to do it with.
We do see the Intimidate coming down. Not totally irrelevant here.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, Collin's really going to need to have some magic shoes to dance his way out of this one. At least, you know, the Garganacle does have Protect, so there is some decision to be made here. But this is just a very challenging spot from Collin's side of the field. Right? I mean, I assume with Emilio, you can pretty much just keep swinging at Garganacle until you get it, and that's pretty much that.
Yeah, and then at some point you just got to deal with the Taurus. It's just kind of there. I feel like it's certainly going to struggle a little bit in this one. But it is going to be the Terrestrialization. Collin finally using it to see if he can get a little bit of wiggle room. See, because he knows, of course, that it can't be the flying Terrestrialization out. We did already see it used onto the Sylveon. So he is safe on this turn of that final turn of the last game, which felt a little bit dicey, being able to get caught by that. But Dondozo just going for the order up. Doesn't even matter about that. It is going to get an attack boost as Garganacle is going to get felled. So yes, maybe it would have been able to try and deal with an Earthquake, but that's not what he was going for in that moment. Dondozo's attack rising again. Taurus does fire off with the close combat, but of course it's not going to be anywhere near enough for the knockout. Taurus's defense is down. I think we know what's coming in the following turn, Scott.
Yeah, it's Dondozo got this one locked up. I like the play by Collin where you've got to hope for a mistake at that point, right? Where you don't want to run from the game. Just gonna hope you get a misplay. Did not happen there, and ordering up a victory here.
Yep, there it is, as the Taurus is knocked out by the Dondozo, wrapping this game up very, very neatly. It's 2-0 for Emilio Forbes over Collin Heier. I think Collin showed some really cool stuff of his team in both games. He showed off the tricks of the Garganacle, showed the King Gambit definitely has a place. Even the back Excalibur in turn one, just being able to take an easy knockout with Ice Shard, right?